It's a Locked On Tanksquad Monday. I should say crossover Monday, as the Arizona Coyotes have another game day. Today, they face the Montreal Canadiens in a battle between the two worst teams in the National Hockey League. Who comes out on top? I'm not sure if that's the question we should be asking, but it's a crossover episode today. We're going to be talking with Scott and Laura of Locked On Canadiens in just a moment. Be sure to stay tuned on this episode of Locked On Coyotes.
You're Locked On Coyotes, your daily podcast on the Arizona Coyotes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everyone, to this special crossover episode of Locked On Coyotes and Locked On Canadiens. I'm your host, Robyn. Carl Pavlik is off today. He just not feeling entirely well after this weekend of just back-to-back Coyotes losses. So joining me in today's episode, we got our friends from Locked On Canadiens, the team that was the Western Conference champions last year. But instead of talking about that, we're talking actual tank off, because these two teams are the two worst teams right now in the National Hockey League. So Laura and Scott, thanks for joining us on this episode.
Thank you for suggesting it, and thank you so much for having us.
We do love a good tankathon here. Our good friends, the Content Boys, have taught us in the ways of the tankathon and how all that it contains.
Oh yeah, I'm slowly looking at the just the lottery odds already. I'm just like, all right, let's see what happens. Let's see how this tank goes. How do you do it?
I'm not the expert here. I have no idea. I know I want them to lose because Shane Wright's super dope, but I'm like, this is terrible. Why am I subjecting myself to this 5 nights a week? It's wild to watch happen.
And it's painful because and it's weird for someone who's covering the Coyotes, because we expected this. Coyotes fans expected this, but it's still painful. It's still painful no matter what. It was like this last summer when they just completely sold off Garland and Kemper and Ekman Larson, and Dvorak was like, all right, we're tanking this year. We can accept it. But even those first 13 games, I'm just like, oh, man, this is gonna suck.
If only they weren't, right? If only they were trying.
Wait, we were trying though. Oh no. We spent to the cap ceiling again and got nowhere. We went in the opposite direction of the Stanley, the literal opposite direction. This is, if anyone wants to know how we got here, I don't know. I don't know if it's coaching, if it's everybody being injured, if it's COVID, if it's global warming, if the chicken nuggets in Montreal aren't good enough. I don't know fully what it is. All I know is that every bad thing that could have possibly happened to this Canadiens team, short of the Bell Center burning down, has happened this year so far.
Don't put that out there, Scott.
I already said it on Berkshire's show. It's going to happen now. It's going to get struck by lightning in a freak storm, and they're going to have to play in they're finally going to get a team in Quebec City this year, and it's going to be the Canadiens. That's what's going to happen.
I mean, during the playoffs, they set the ice on fire, at least on the projections. So, I wouldn't put it past it.
And a cop car. Let's not forget that. We can't not remember that they flipped a cop car over after they beat, was it the Jets?
I want to say it was the Jets.
It might have been, because that's when they were carrying the pylon down St. Catherine as well, I'm pretty sure. So,
yeah, definitely.
Canadian fans seem like they like to have fun when the team's doing good. Fun.
Arson. Fun. Julian's gonna kill me for this.
But again, this is it is crazy because we didn't expect the Canadiens to be this bad. Because I mean, like I mentioned at the beginning, they won the Campbell Trophy, and they were went to the Stanley Cup final just last year. What happened?
So I think It's important to kind of just talk about that a little bit because the Coyotes were very blatant and open about what they were doing, right? I mean, they could say that they weren't tanking, but they were gunning for some good draft picks. And it's not a bad strategy when you're looking at the division. The division's already pretty weak. You're just kind of like, all right, I gotta get to the bottom of this weak division, right? What do you do? So they sold people off, they made some trades, you totally got it. And this is completely separate from the off ice drama, which we will ask you about because we are curious. But they were clear about it. It was clear and it was intentional. And the Canadiens, it was kind of not necessarily the opposite, because there didn't really seem to be a lot of intention to, for example, Shea Weber. They knew that he was injured. They knew that his career was likely over, or at the very least, his season was not going to happen, right? Like at the very, very least, you knew that. They didn't take steps to replace him, really. They took steps to replace defensemen, but they didn't, right? Then they let Corey Perry walk, which was one of the things where like Scott and I have been scratching our heads being like, I cannot believe that Corey Perry is a giant missing piece on this team. There's a lot of veteran leadership that was not there. And the unfortunate thing is that the Carey Price as well, they didn't expect him to be out as long as this, right? Like he had a knee injury. He was going to be rehabbing that knee injury, but then he also ended up checking into the NHLPA Players Assistance Program, which was not expected. But at the same time, they did, in fact, take steps, right? Like when Carey Price put himself or agreed to be available to be picked by the Seattle Kraken, the whole idea was that they needed to keep Jake Allen because Jake Allen was that good, competent goalie that they needed. And unfortunately, with how badly the team played in front of him, Jake Allen, even on the nights that he was playing lights out, he wasn't getting those wins. He wasn't getting the W's. There was no run support. So that went wrong in itself as well. And like currently we're talking about Jake Allen being out at least a week. It's bad luck, right? Like he's been injured twice this season. And, they picked up a goalie on the waiver wire who, without any defense in front of him or without a competent defense in front of him, has struggled as well. So I think one of the things was that there was sort of a method to what Marc Bergevin was doing, but the method wasn't replace what was missing. I think he tried to go in a new direction without really having a clear vision. He was just kind of like, all right, we don't have this guy, we don't have this guy, we don't have this guy, but it'll be okay because we have this other guy. We got this other center. Philippe Danault walking was a big loss as well, right? You lost a lot of veterans, you lost a lot of talent, and you didn't replace them, but you still expected to ice a team that would have, in his mind, probably been a bubble team. And if you were looking at the team at the time, though, objectively, that was a little bit of a stretch. Now, injuries were also a factor. There's a lot of bad luck with who got injured and when at this point. And then obviously now every single Canadian, I think, has been on the COVID protocol list. I don't think there's been anybody who's been off of it or who hasn't been on it.
Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield have somehow avoided, and Jonathan Drouin have avoided the COVID list. They are the only three, I'm pretty sure, who have managed to do that, which is stunning given everything else this year. I'm like, oh, well, at least Nick Suzuki's still fun, and I'm surprised that COVID and injuries haven't just taken that from me as well, because that would mean first-line center Jake Evans, I think. Like...
Listen,
I love
God
Jake
bless
Evans,
Jake Evans. We love this guy. He's so good at what he does, but what he does is not first line center.
Exactly. We had an entire AHL team in the lineup a week, 2 weeks, week and a half ago. Time has no meaning. That's how this season is gone. Marc Bergevin did try his best before he was fired to build what he thought was going to be a multi-part franchise here to go back to the playoffs. And on paper, they were a little bit worse than last year. Yes, that much is true. But we saw what those next steps were for a lot of people, the Cole Caulfields, the Nick Suzuki, Jonathan Drouin coming back, etc. And then just everything went in the opposite direction. Everything that could have gone wrong did. And that's not anything he could control, but everything that could have possibly gone off the rails did. And it cost him his job. Jeff Gordon's looking for the new GM now. And it's also exposing the coaching staff's flaws in that adjustments aren't really there. And the games where they've looked the best are the games where there's a lot of guys coming from the AHL and into the lineup where they haven't been Dominique Ducharme yet, to be quite honest. And it's not the best indictment of a coach who went to the Stanley Cup final last year, but unfortunately, that's kind of where the team is at right now. Everything that could go wrong did, and now they're trying to dig out of a historically bad hole overall.
We're talking to Scott and Laura of Locked On Canadiens. We were talking about what went wrong for both of our teams and what caused us to get to this point of the two worst teams right now in the National Hockey League. We'll get to more. But Laura has a couple things she wants to share from our little friends at Built Bar.
Of course. So if you want to have energy and not come out lackluster like both of our teams are doing on the ice, we can suggest Built Bar. If you listen to either of our shows, you'll know Built Bar is one of our favorite sponsors. They're a protein bar that tastes just like a candy bar. They are made with real chocolate, low in sugar, high in protein, and they give you that boost that you need. They've got 18 delicious flavors, but they've also got some special edition ones once in a while if you want to try them out. So make sure that you've got your energy, whether you want to do a workout, whether you're just trying to confront your day and check out Built Bar. You can go to built.com and enter promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. That's built.com. Enter promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off your order.
All right, so let's continue once again this crossover episode, Locked On Coyotes and Locked On Canadiens, as we discuss, this tankathon that we got going on, the Fight for Right campaign, the pain for Shane, shame for Shane, however you want to call it. Shane Wright.
I think shame for shame is shame for Shane is probably the most appropriate given these two teams.
Exactly, just because it's just bad how bad they are, and the upcoming draft just does not just Shane Wright, but the upcoming draft is going to be incredibly deep. So even no matter who you get, you're going to get something good. The Coyotes have 3 first-round draft picks, including one of yours, which I wish it was the other one, but it's top 10 protected. I can only ask for so much.
I think overall in the draft, like the Arizona Coyotes have all of the picks through every round. They just collected picks for the next couple of rounds. And it's a smart move because by all accounts, the next 2 drafts are going to be pretty deep. I think it'll be interesting in Montreal, given that the draft is being held in Montreal. Obviously, right now, we don't know if there's going to be any fans involved or anything like that, or even if it's going to be an in-person draft, thanks to the situation everywhere. But I think it'll be really interesting for the Canadiens to have a bona fide first overall pick. But at the same time, the draft is deep enough, especially in those top spots, that I wouldn't be disappointed if they got anyone in the top 3 or 4, even top 5. You're hearing a lot of good things, but obviously it would be great for the fans. It'll be great for the new management team as well. It'll be great for the young core that they're building to get a first overall pick, to get potentially Shane Wright, likely Shane Wright. I think that at the moment, though, the Canadiens are in this situation where they've said that they're not going to change the coaching staff, and we don't know if the new general manager, who will be announced in the coming days, right? The Canadiens have said that they want to hurry up on that front. We haven't heard anything to the point we're recording this, but I think that in the coming days, we're going to know who the general manager is, and they might have a different point of view as to Jeff Gordon. So the coaching staff might change, and I think the games that they play will be better by default, just in general. Because I think the systems are the failing right now, even though, you've got your good players injured, the roster isn't that strong, all of that you want to talk about, all the, the change in general manager and all the stuff that's going on with the off-ice stuff or the front office stuff. Like, there's a lot of quote unquote distractions, as people like to say. It's instability overall, but I think a strong system would enable the young players that they keep calling up from Laval, or the young players that are there that are expected to be on this team for a long time, to learn within a system. Right now, that doesn't exist. So it's entirely possible that if they change the coaching staff, we're not looking at that last place. We're looking at somewhere a little less palatable, like the 25th overall, the 26th overall, 27th overall, which isn't necessarily what you want. Like right now, you've got this season that was lost anyway. You want to go for it. You want to go and get that number 1 pick. So I don't I don't necessarily think that is going to happen. A lot of people are expecting the coaching staff to change, but Jeff Gorton himself said they're not expecting to change the coaching staff this year. This is not something that's on the cards. So I think it's likely, but I'm also curious to know from your perspective, how do you expect the rest of the season to play out for the Coyotes?
Well, they're still engaging. Obviously, they're still intentionally taking without saying it. Of course, they're talking about, oh, refresh, seeing what we can do to build the future of this team, and that's even talking about, potentially trading Jacob Chikrin. That those trade talks have been escalating as well. So you have a lot of different things that this team is like, all right, how much value can we get for this player? It's like, oh, you're going to give us a first round draft pick, a second round draft pick. Okay, we'll take those, and we'll give you this player because they're just keep racking this up, and it's I think it's impressive, and I think. Yeah, the team's going to keep sucking the more they get rid of their star players. Like if Shane Gostisbehere happens to have a more superstar, then who knows? He might just get traded right back away, which would be an incredible win for the Coyotes, given that they essentially got him for nothing from Philadelphia. Actually, Philadelphia gave us a draft pick to take him. So that gives you an idea of just how well the Coyotes are trying to take this and go for the losses.
It's wild to me too, is that like there was the Christian Dvorak trade, and now the Canadiens are sitting on this lottery protected, but potentially not. But with the potential sell off, the Canadiens should be looking at what the Coyotes did, and they need to decide: is this going to be everyone had a bad year, so let's roll it back again and not trade the vets, or is this going to be a fire sale where they can load up and in the next 2 years when the draft is really deep? It's like, okay, you're going to go scorched earth. This year is going to be terrible. Next year's probably not going to be much better, but you have the Connor Bedard, Matev Michkov in the next draft. You have Shane Wright this year. You have other guys, and just stock up on all those picks. It's the Canadiens need to decide which way they want to go about this. Are they going full strip down like Arizona did, where they barely had it? We played Guess Who's on the Coyotes basically to start the season here. What can the Canadiens learn from that? And if that's going to be the option, the blueprint's right there. And now you just got to draft smart, because if you have a poor drafting staff or whatever, that's going to backfire in your face. Unfortunately, if you have a million picks, it doesn't matter if you don't use them properly.
Yeah, and any team can start up that fire sale, right? You've seen teams do it, left and right, and I think a lot of more than half the time, some teams fail at it. They don't utilize the picks correctly, or they don't know where to get the proper draft picks. Bill Armstrong is doing something where he's just like, let's get as many as I can. This way, it's very hard to mess up, especially with how it is. I mean, again, it's like 3 first rounders in this year's draft, and I believe that's 5 second round picks. So they have 8 picks in the first 2 rounds of the incredibly deep draft. I'm just like, okay, Bill, don't mess this up.
Well, one of them is bound to go right out of 8, right? Like theoretically, 8 in the first 2 rounds, you're gonna get 2 NHL players probably. I haven't done the specific math and sat down and counted it, but it's unlikely that all 8 of them are going to be busts. It's not unheard of, but it's highly unlikely in my mind.
And there's also a likely case, and this was something that got brought up this last summer when I had the Coyotes insider Craig Morgan on the show. And he said, don't be surprised if the Coyotes utilize their 5 second rounders to get back into the first round for another pick. Because, you think about it, they have something that a lot of people were seeking after. A couple second rounders, those are some decent value out there. The Coyotes want to get a higher chance at a first rounder. That way it's better for them. Okay, I'll take that.
Right, and the thing is, they have the flexibility to do it with all those picks, right? And I think at the end of the day, the Canadiens have pieces that they can trade should that be the direction that they want to go in. They can do it leading up to the draft. They can do it before the trade deadline. But it would be sad to see a lot of their players that we like go. But there's a lot of value there, right? You can trade a Tyler Toffoli. He's on a really economical contract for his production. He had a really great season last year. He's struggling this year, obviously, but there's some injuries in play and things like that. There's some value there. And there, you know, I think it's possible that, not possible, I think it's likely that teams are going to call asking about Jake Allen, and he's going to get a good return. It's going to make us sad for sure. I mean, we love Jake Allen, but you know, he's another player that has a lot of value in terms of if you're trying to get draft picks. So I think the new manager, whenever he or she is reinstated. So from what we know, the last few people that or the people that made it to the second round of interviews or their finalists or whatever seem to be Mathieu Darche, Kent Hughes, and Daniel Briere, all people who the media have been speculating or making informed guesses that they were the favorites. And the more we hear, the more it seems like that's who they're looking at. But they did interview a bunch of people. They did speak to a bunch of people, and they probably will be adding a lot to the front office. So like the vision needs to be, they all need to have a unified vision. And that vision might not be let's tank. Let's take advantage of this bad year, try and get a high draft pick, but then let's turn it around next year. So you don't know, right? Like if it's Marc Bergevin, you know he's going to be trying to turn it around next year. You know he's going to be doing stopgap measures over the summer and trying to like, you know, shore up certain things. But if you're going to do a wholesale change, I feel like everybody needs to buy in. And unfortunately, that means that we as fans are going to have to say goodbye to some players that we really like.
And that's a discussion that was made this last summer for Coyotes fans, because we didn't know what Bill Armstrong wanted to do. Because there's like, okay, this Coyotes team was still on the bubble last year. They were maybe a playoff team. Connor Garland, one of the best one of the best players out there right now, and he's just, and a lot of these players, you know, goaltending saves the Coyotes. Darcy Kemper, Antti Raanta, Aiden Hill, one of the, you know, a lethal trifecta of goaltenders. And it's like, okay, this team is capable. Do they go fire sale though and just completely restart? Because it looks like some things are starting to fall apart. We didn't realize that would be the case until draft day when they traded away Garland and Ekman Larson together to Vancouver to get that 9th overall pick in the last draft deal on Gunther. It was at that point where it's like, okay, now we know that they're tanking, and everything after that was okay. This makes more sense. So a lot of so that starting point, those questions, yeah, it makes sense.
And I think that's it. Is that like it's tough to be Montreal right now because, like Laura said, you have to bring in everybody. You have to kind of find a united vision here. And the team didn't know this is what they were going to be this year. Like we thought they were going to be a fringe playoff team, and it all went badly. And now there's a lot of hard questions that have to be asked. And what do you do with the trade deadline this year? We know some names that are likely on the move, but do you keep an Arturi Lehkonen, a Joel Armia? Do you trade a Tyler Toffoli? There's a lot of hard questions that have to be asked. At least the Coyotes, it made sense at the time with what was going on. For the Canadiens, they're caught in this weird in between that no one really has a definitive answer on what they're going to do. And with the way the team is set up due to what Marc Bergevin did as GM, it's unclear what they're going to do with some of these contracts. There's a lot of big long-term deals on this team for a lot of, you know, players who've been there for a while, the core and older core. What are you going to do? And that's what Gordon and the new GM, whoever he or she may be, there's a lot of questions that have to be asked and a lot of not so easy answers, I'm sure, coming in the future.
Absolutely. And if you're someone who bets, it might be hard to place a bet on what the Canadiens end up doing this upcoming rest of the year and forthcoming off seasons. But speaking of betting, I want to tell you guys, Bet Online would like to wish you a happy betting new year as we continue the march to the playoffs and beyond. Bet Online is the #1 spot for all the best sports wagering action for 2022. A new year and a new updated desktop and mobile website to sign up today and receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use the promo code LOCKEDON to get started. From football, basketball, hockey, boxing, and UFC right down to your favorite Vegas casino games, don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers for 2022. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. And now it's time to take a look to today's game, guys. I believe it's 2 p.m. Arizona time, so that's 4 p.m. over there on the East Coast for the Arizona Coyotes and Montreal Canadiens, these two teams set to face against each other. I was making the joke a couple weeks ago. It's like, should we just make it the Roadrunners versus the Rocket at this point? Just call it that.
It does look like it, though. If you look at the rosters and who's playing and who's not, the Laval Rocket are pretty impressive, though. Those of them who've been called up to Montreal. But the more time goes on, the more bodies become available. I believe Josh Anderson is now slotted in to start Monday, unless something changes in like the morning skate or whatever. I don't even know if they do a morning skate for a game that early. Yeah, the latest on him was that he was expected to be ready for Monday.
It is very wild. We went from Brandon Baddock in the top 6 to Josh Anderson is back like 3 weeks ahead of schedule. Tyler Toffoli is skating. Paul Byron's going to be back with the team. We went from the Rocket to the Habs very quickly, but the Habs are still not any good so far this year. It's going to be the ultimate stoppable object versus movable force in this game. And it's going to either be the best game possible with like a 3-on-3 for the ages, or this is going to be like a 2-1 wet dog fart of a game that no one ever wants to speak about when it's over.
Yeah, it's crazy that I think of all this because for the Coyotes side, half the Coyotes defense is Roadrunners players: Mayo, Mosier, Koyolchanak, Soderstrom, who's spent most of the last year of Tucson. It's like, what is going on with this? And they've all actually been impressive. I'm just like, what is like? I think they've helped stabilize this team. Obviously from the beginning of the year, this season when they were started 11-1 or whatever it was. It was bad.
It's pretty funny to me is that both teams, it's like, hey, we're calling up this random player because they're all that's left right now in the AHL, and they come in and they perform above expectation. I don't know, are the expectations just so low for both teams that, well, you don't look terrible, so we're considering this a win. And I also, we've talked about it on Locked On Canadiens a lot here, is it feels like it's a second training camp for a lot of guys. People who might not have gotten regular shot in the preseason, they might have been injured or they just didn't have their game legs underneath them. This acts kind of like as a second showcase for them. It's like, hey, don't forget about me over here. I'm still valuable to this team. What can you do for me? So that is the one big positive I'm taking away, especially in a game like this. This is a chance for a lot of unheralded or underrated players to get a chance to shine right now.
Yeah, I said before the season started that everybody on this team for the Coyotes has something to prove, and that's what. And I think even that includes everybody on the Roadrunners, and I think that's why every call up that they've done have been played. There's been played above expectations, and that they are playing to not get sent down. They are playing their absolute asses off. And they're pretty much saying we will not give you a reason to send us back down to Tucson. And that's exactly what's going on. That's what happened with Barrett Hayton this year. He got called up and instantly became a huge hit. And it's like, all right, nope, you're not getting sent down. You're staying up.
I think if you look at Montreal, Scott, would you agree that Michael Pezzetta is that guy for Montreal?
What a wild statement in 2022 right now is that Michael Pezzetta, Laurent Dauphin as well, former Arizona Coyote Laurent Dauphin, have become pieces that it's like, well, we can't really take them out of the lineup right now. They're playing really well for this team. And Pezzetta was an AHL fourth liner when he got called up, and Dauphin was kind of an afterthought with the center depth, and they got their shot and they took it. The taxi squad helps. It keeps them there. They got to rotate bodies through. And even if they go back to the Rocket, they've made enough of a case that it's like, hey, you're going to give me another contract next year, right? Because I've proven I can push for an NHL spot here. So Pezzetta's been the big surprise. He's not putting up a ton of points, but you see the effort, the energy, and the give a damn that's missing a lot of nights. But that switch doesn't come off for that guy. He is 110% about as hockey as you can get in one person.
We should tell our friends at Bet Online to come up with the odds for Give a Damn. I like that, Scott.
I
Give a
love
damn
it.
per
The give a
60,
damn.
baby. Let's go.
Speaking of Bet Online, let's go to Bet Online to check out the odds for today's game. I keep wanting to say tonight, but it's in a freaking matinee game, so like it's. So let's take a look at the odds for the game, and to my fans, you're gonna be quite surprised to hear this because Carl and I were just talking about this, that there's never been a game in which the Arizona Coyotes were favored except today. The Coyotes are favored by 1.5 at plus 210. Montreal Canadiens, 1.5 underdogs, minus 250. Money line is both of them at minus 105. So there is no true favorite. So essentially, this is like a pick'em game. Total points is 5.5.
Impressive. It's
I was just saying,
impressive.
like, if the Habs aren't the favorites, just hammer them because they're due for a game where they score like 7 goals and then they just get shut out like 6-0 the next game. And if it's going to happen, it's going to be this one. Like, they had moments in their last couple games that were good. And I'm like, okay, maybe things are getting figured out. And then they weren't. They're due for a win at some point. Like, they've played about as well as you could expect. I would not be shocked if Arizona somehow pulls this out again, given how well they played against the Leafs and everyone else this week. So it's going to be something. No matter what, some team's going to be happy for the wrong reasons, I'm pretty sure. So if you see the Habs as underdogs in this, hammer in on them, honestly. I think they're due for a big game, honestly.
I'm looking at the over for this, total points at over 5.5, mainly because for one reason is, you said that the Habs are due for a high scoring game, and it's definitely possible, because I'm sure the Coyotes are going to give Karel Vejmelka the day off, because he played against Colorado in the second of their back-to-back, and then he also had that stellar performance against Toronto. So it's like, okay, we can give you a break. We're going to give this game to starting goaltender for the Tucson Roadrunners, Ivan Prosvetov, because Scott Wedgwood is still in COVID protocol. And this is something I actually called last week too. I'm like, okay, put Prosvetov in for Game 1 of Colorado, give Vejmelka Game 2 Colorado, bring Prosvetov back for the Canadiens to give him at least an easier matchup, but so that way you're not thrown to the wolves. Give you the experience, but we'll just see what happens.
It's always dangerous though when you take the easy matchup. There's always like the easy matchup always shows up with something to prove, right?
Yeah.
Like when you were favoring the Canadiens, they really weren't able to get it together, but now they seem to be putting in a better effort than they have been in a long time, and part of that has been the energy of the call-ups and the system that they play under in Laval, and part of that has been, I think, as time goes on, the shame is kind of getting to them at this point. With the I guess with the Habs, it's like Scott said, I think it's either going to be one of those really high-scoring games for the Canadiens, or it's going to be a high-scoring game for the Coyotes. Or it's going to be like a 3-on-3 and everybody just really wanted to go home and you end up with a 1-0 total with final score.
Let's put in our final score predictions on this one. Scott, have you go first?
I'm going to go 6-2 Canadiens. I don't know why.
Oh.
They've given me no reason to actually bet on that, but it's going to be stupid. I'm going to be, here's the thing is I have to work tomorrow, so I'm going to miss the game. So I'm just assuming it's going to be the most fun one that they've played in a long time, and I'm going to miss all of it. So,
well, if my employer is listening to this, I'm going to miss the first hour. I'm only going to start watching at 5 o'clock on the dot. And my prediction is going to be 1-0 Canadiens.
1-0 Canadiens. Since I already picked the over, I kind of feel stuck to go over that 5.5. What do I think? I think I'm going to go 5-4 Arizona in overtime.
I like it.
We're going full stupid with this one here. We're going to go full stupid, and I'm here for it. Like,
I love it.
Samuel so many goals.
Might be starting, so.
Highlight reel goals from people you would never expect to score a goal in the NHL.
We're going to see some
Rem
goals.
Pitlick hat trick. We're going to get a Rem Pitlick hat trick because why not? Why not at this point? It's the most random name on the team I can think of.
I'll add in
Right?
Dyson Mayo hat trick for us. Oh, that would be the most random absolute ever. It'd be crazy. But anyways, we're running out of time on this episode, this crossover episode. Once again, Locked On Coyotes and Locked On Canadiens. Scott and Laura, why don't you tell everybody where we can find you and your podcast?
Scott, do you want to do the honors?
I can. If you want to follow us individually on Twitter, Laura is at The Active Stick, and I am at Scott Matla on Twitter. And you can follow our podcast at LO_Canadiens on Twitter. And you can obviously find us wherever you get your daily podcasts as well.
And for us here at Locked On Coyotes, we are at LO_Coyotes. I am personally at Robyn_Leano. That's Robyn with a Y _LEANO. And again, you can interact with any of us. You can even interact with Carl when he's back, and we can answer anything you have on a future episode of the podcast. Again, that is it for today's episode. Hope you guys are staying safe out there. Hope you guys are staying healthy. And for the Coyotes fans all listening, don't forget to howl on.